Come expand your spiritual journey. Join us for Just the Talk. Sundays, 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. Mountain Time. Experience Unity Kitchener and Ottawa. Center for Spiritual Living Midtown. Center for Spiritual Living Denver. Unity of Garden Park. New Thought Philadelphia. The Sunshine Cathedral. Unity of Savannah. And the Ohm Center for Spiritual Living. Come unleash your spiritual potential with New Thought Media Network. And now, let's experience New Thought Philadelphia.
The talk today is called Oneness 101, and this is was inspired by the practitioner class because we're doing a module on teaching a class or a workshop, and so the group was getting together to like what's the workshop they want to do, and they wanted to do a workshop on oneness. And so as they're talking about all this in front of me, I thought about Oneness 101 because it's the basic introduction to oneness, which is what the teaching is about. Our teaching is about oneness. This is the entire basis of the New Thought teaching. There is one. There is only one. And I didn't steal it because it's going to take them a while to put the workshop together and promote it and get it out there. And this was only a week or two ago. So I'm going to pregame it a little bit for you guys. So the reason we say that this is a teaching of oneness is because that's the foundational notion. And we basically trace the teaching back to Ralph Waldo Emerson. He was a Unitarian minister in the Boston area and got involved in transcendentalism. And then he had to leave his Unitarian church job because he no longer believed in the Trinity, which is the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, the separation. And he insisted there is only one. There is only one. And the entire New Thought teaching has grown out of that. Other people over the years have taken that idea and then run with it to prove that healing prayer, mental healing actually works, to put some legs on this about turning it into a full-fledged philosophy that we can talk about. But the basis of the New Thought teaching is oneness. There is only one. We are part of one infinite creative presence. And that's not always obvious. It is not always apparent to us that we are part of one divine presence, that we are just aspects of it, and that everything that we're encountering in the world is that same divine essence just taking different form. We are not just connected, we are part of the same one. So there's some apparent separation. Our senses tell us that I'm in here and the world is out there. It tells us, based on limited lifespan, that there was something before this life started, there's something after this life concludes. And that is a separation because I'm only here for this, from this perspective, looking at it in this particular way. And in that way, it's really easy to get away from the idea of oneness and say that we're all separate. We're all on our own paths. We're all having our own experiences. It's all different. And there are a couple of ways to understand that even though we appear to be so completely separate and independent individual, and we celebrate that, we celebrate our individuality, there are some ways that we can understand the connection that we have. So I'm going to do one that's going to start out by seeming like a physical exercise and activity, but it'll turn intellectual pretty quickly. What I'd like you to do is take a deep, full breath. Let yourself be completely filled, hold. Wait until that breath starts to feel a little bit stale. And then a deep breath out, let it go. Feel the difference as you're breathing in and breathing out. Take another deep breath in, let yourself be filled again. And again, when it starts to feel a little bit stale, let it go, breathe out. And after that need to breathe comes along, breathing out feels really good, even though breathing in felt really good as well. Now, those seem to be separate things, but you can't take two inhales in a row. You need to do an exhale in between them. This is where we're going to get a little bit intellectual there. When you have a full breath of air and it starts to feel stale, it's because some of the oxygen in that breath has been consumed and you need to take another breath to get more oxygen. So some people think of oxygen and air as being interchangeable, but they're not. They are not. Oxygen is less than 20% of what's in the air that we're breathing. Most of the air that we're breathing, 80%, is nitrogen, which our body doesn't particularly need for anything breath-wise. It's sort of a filler for our breathing purposes. There are other reasons that we need nitrogen. And then there's almost 1% that's trace gases. And most of that is a gas called argon. And you probably haven't been thinking about argon a lot lately. And that's completely reasonable, because sometimes we talk about nitrogen. We know that we need oxygen, but who the heck thinks about argon? And why is Reverend Bill talking about argon? What is the importance of the argon that's in the breath that I'm taking? And how is he possibly going to tie this back into oneness? Because this is Oneness 101 that we're talking about. Well, the reason is that argon is almost completely inert. It does not interact with anything. It is a very, very stable gas. So when it comes into being, it doesn't change. And when somebody is using argon for an industrial purpose, the way that they get the argon is they distill it out of air, because there's 1% argon in the air, and they just use a fractional distillation and get a tank that's purely argon by taking the oxygen and the nitrogen and moving it elsewhere. Well, I hear you say, why didn't we just make argon? It turns out that there's only one way to make argon. Bear with me. And that is the decay, the radioactive decay of potassium. And you know how long it takes for the for the potassium to decay? For the decay to happen, the half-life, for half of the potassium to turn into argon takes 1.25 billion years. So there's the potassium. And over 1 billion years later, half of it has turned into argon. So all of the argon that exists on our planet took part in that process, which is not a quick thing. So the argon that's in that breath that you're breathing, almost a full percent of what you're breathing in, has been around for an awfully long time. When I breathe in, I'm filled with everything that's coming in. I use some of the oxygen. I don't use any of the nitrogen. I let that breath go. A little tiny bit of it is turned into carbon dioxide. And the rest is argon. The argon comes in, the argon goes out. Somebody else breathes in, it's the same argon going in and out. And that's been going on since the beginning of time. We have all been breathing the same argon throughout all of human history. Recorded human history goes back maybe 5,000 or 6,000 years. That's not enough time to make any argon. All the argon that's here now was here then. The air that you're breathing has that same argon that people in biblical times were breathing. That the people who discovered the New World were breathing. That the people who were involved in the Renaissance were breathing. That the people who signed the Declaration of Independence were breathing. It is exactly the same argon. It has not changed at all. Take another deep breath in. Be filled completely. You are part of that one. And breathe it out. Let it go. Let that awareness of argon be a reminder that even though it's not obvious, even though it's not something that's top of mind, we are all part of that one infinite creative power. We all are connected. And we're all expressing the divine in our own way. When I teach people about practical prayer, we start by talking about creation stories. And it's not because you need to believe my creation story. It's because when we understand our own creation story, we get a perspective on how it is we think the world works. Some people love the creation story of the Big Bang. Very scientific. There was an incredibly dense singularity, and then for some reason it began expanding and exploding and evolving. Huge release of energy that over millions of years started to turn into matter, and then over billions of years has evolved, and stellar reactions have created the other elements that have then formed and coalesced into things like our planet and evolved into things like our life. And I like that creation story because it's scientific and we keep on coming up with more and more evidence about it. And the reason it relates to oneness is because we all share the Big Bang. Everything that exists in the universe came from the Big Bang. That includes me and you and all of our activities and all our experiences and everything that happens on this planet and everything that happens in this galaxy and everything that happens in this universe. It's all that one taking its own specific form. If you like a different creation story, there's the ones that are in the Bible. In the beginning was the Word. The Word was God. The Word was with God. That's a creation story about creating with the Word, using the Word to create something. A little earlier in the Bible, right there at the beginning. In the beginning there was darkness and void. And God said, let there be light. And there was light. And that's another explanation of, I think, the same creation story. That there's one infinite intelligence, one divine presence. And it said, let there be. And that's the creative process that creates everything. And that's the same creative process that continues to create. That's the creative process that we put to work, that we put to use when we're doing a practical prayer. We identify that there is that one, we're part of that one, and the word that we speak is spoken with the same authority as the word that was with God. And other religions and other spiritual traditions have their own stories. And they're all telling, in many ways, the same story from a different perspective. The Navajo, Native Americans, say the first people emerged through a series of underworlds, each one destroyed by a flood or a conflict until they climbed into the present glittering world. It's another way of understanding or explaining evolution, about that, combining that, going from that creation state of pure energy into something that's understandable. Here's one that Dina is not going to like at all. It's Egyptian. It varies from the city to city, but the common version is that the god Actun emerged from the primordial waters of Nun and created the first gods by sneezing and spitting. So, okay. The Dogon in Mali said the supreme god Amma created the world from a cosmic egg that split into twin pairs, setting the pattern of duality that underlies all experience. I love that we all can have a different creation story. I especially love that they all tend to be the same story told from a different perspective. They tend to be stories of order emerging from chaos. They tend to be an infinite creative power doing something and bringing us and everything around us into existence. The Maori say in the beginning, Ranjanu, the Sky Father, and I'm not going to pronounce the Earth Mother's name, lay locked in a tight embrace. Their children, trapped in darkness between them, eventually forced them apart, creating light and the world as we know it. By forcing the Sky Father and the Earth Mother apart, which leaves a space and also probably was not that pleasant for the Sky Father and Earth Mother. So regardless of what our creation story is, we can look at it and use it as a way of understanding the same thing we understand when we're breathing in and experiencing the argon. Ernest Holmes said there's a power greater than you are and you can use it. There's a power in the universe greater than you are and you can use it. And I go further by saying that you are using it all the time. And since I love taking scripture verse and only reading part of it, God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten. And that's John 3:16, the New Testament. And then the next word is son, and then it talks about the son some more, and that you need to have faith that you're going to get all the goodies. God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten. There's only one. We are all the begotten. You are the begotten. And regardless of what other creation stories you like to tell, you're part of that begotten. So as we get into our relationship with the divine, as we are aware of our oneness, we use some language to describe it. Used to have a neighbor who's a cop, and I said, talked to him on some Sunday morning. I said, "What'd you do at work yesterday?" He says, "I just chased bad guys." That's so foreign to my way of thinking. But it occurred to me that that's the way he approaches life. And he perceives himself to be a good guy. And in order for him to continue in his work as a cop, one of the things that they need to have in supply of some variety is the bad guys. They need somebody to chase. So you can say that this is good and this is bad, but that's, that's a job. and you look at what's going on in the news today, and you love to say, oh, this is a battle between good and evil, the good guys and the bad guys. And I look at the country that I'm part of, and then I start wondering, where are the good guys here? I look at the other people who have traditionally been good guys, and the other ones who have historically been bad guys, and the story is changing. The roles and identities are shifting. And I can be really alarmed by that and say, oh my gosh, what's happening? And I can use it to remind myself of the oneness. The difference between somebody who thinks of themselves as a good guy and the world out there as a bad guy, and the tables being turned and the person realizing that they've been doing something that has not been helpful. That's what we were talking about last week with unintended consequences. It's a matter of perspective. And by being aware of who we are, of being aware that we are at choice in who we want to be, we get to allow our expression of the one to come into alignment with the way that we would like that to be expressed in the world. In other words, who do you want to be? Who do you want to be? You are a divine expression of God's infinite love expressing in a way that is uniquely you. Now what? How do you want that to look? How do you want that to feel? What do you want people to say about you when they're talking either behind your back or when they're presenting you some retirement award? Who do you want to be? What do you want the story about you to be? Had that great experience recently. The astronauts made a trip to the moon, and the first one since the 1970s. And they reported the same thing that everybody who's been in lunar orbit has reported, is the amazing feeling of oneness that they had with all of humanity. Because getting 250,000 miles away, it puts all of this in great perspective. And I'm going to play a video now. In 1990, as the Voyager 1, the space probe, was going out to the outer reaches of the solar system. Had been traveling for a good long time. Carl Sagan, the astronomer, physicist, and philosopher as far as I'm concerned, told the folks at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory, turn the camera around. So instead of looking at space, we could look back at ourselves. And the picture that they got is what's called the pale blue dot. And Carl Sagan wrote a story about the pale blue dot. And somebody's turned it into a video. And so I'm going to share that with you now.
That's here. That's home. That's us. On it, everyone you love, everyone you know, everyone you ever heard of, every human being who ever was, lived out their lives. The aggregate of our joy and suffering, thousands of confident religions, ideologies, and economic doctrines, every hunter and forager, every hero and coward, every creator and destroyer of civilization, every king and peasant, every young couple in love, every mother and father, hopeful child, inventor and explorer, every teacher of morals, every corrupt politician, every superstar, every supreme leader, every saint and sinner in the history of our species lived there, on a mote of dust, suspended in a sunbeam. The Earth is a very small stage in a vast cosmic arena. Think of the rivers of blood spilled by all those generals and emperors, so that in glory and triumph they could become the momentary masters of a fraction of a dot. Think of the endless cruelties visited by the inhabitants of one corner of this pixel on the scarcely distinguishable inhabitants of some other corner. How frequent their misunderstandings, how eager they are to kill one another, how fervent their hatreds. Our posturings, our imagined self-importance, the delusion that we have some privileged position in the universe are challenged by this point of pale light. Our planet is a lonely speck in the great enveloping cosmic dark. In our obscurity, in all this vastness, there is no hint that help will come from elsewhere to save us from ourselves. The Earth is the only world known so far to harbor life. There is nowhere else, at least in the near future, to which our species could migrate. Visit? Yes. Settle? Not yet. Like it or not, for the moment, the Earth is where we make our stand. It has been said that astronomy is a humbling and character-building experience. There is perhaps no better demonstration of the folly of human conceits than this distant image. To me, it underscores our responsibility to deal more kindly with one another and to preserve and cherish the pale blue dot, the only home we've ever known.